is overview from the top. Okay, gambar daripada atas. Macam mana kita nak tengok the types of species that undergo colonizations and successions process dekat mangrove. So this is the sea, air laut. This one is the tides. Okay, this part, the muddy bank exposed to the tide. So around the muddy banks, the soils very soft, okay, and watery. So favorable for pioneer species, Avicennia species. This one pioneer species that undergo process colonization. Okay, the types of root is the extensive cable roots underground, bercabang-cabang dekat bawah. And once the ground become higher due to the types of extensive cable roots that traps more sediments, and then the soils become higher, more exposure to the light, and this part not favorable for pioneer species anymore, but favorable for successor species, the first successor species, reservoir species. Okay, Avicennia and Sonoratia still pioneer species. Okay, Rhizophora successor species, the first successor species with props roots that traps even more silt and also mud. So the grounds become higher and more exposure to the sunlight. So the grounds become drier and favorable for the next successor species, Bulgara species, with buttress roots. And still, Bulgara with the buttress root which traps more mud and salts as well as sediments, so the grounds become higher and more exposure to the light become drier, and these Bulgara species will be replaced by the terrestrial species or land species, and the process of succession process will be keeps replace until reach climax community. Okay, the inland zone represents the species dekat lands, terrestrial species with less covered by the seawater and also receive fresh water from the ground. Okay, so for the zonations, you need to identify seaward zones, middle zones, and also inland zone. So seaward zones, the zones with high exposure to the tide. Middle zones dah jauh sikit daripada tide, such as part yang ada Rhizophora species and Bulgara species. Inland zone, terrestrial species mostly. Okay, got it? Okay, we proceed with colonization and succession in bare ground. Okay, for the bare ground, tanah tandus. Okay, we start with type of species. Tak ada lagi species. Bare ground. Bare grounds, they start with the bare rocks and also the sand left behind. Tanah tandus yang tak ada apa-apa lagi. Yang ada hanya the sand and also the rocks. And these environments of bare rocks and sand left behind by a forest fire. And this background is not suitable for most organisms after the forest fire. But when the ground cooled down, dah sejuk, water re-enter the environment as well as in the presence of air and also nutrients and also the sunlight, the spore and seed of the certain plants start to germinate and grow. So once the spore and seed of the certain plants start to germinate and grow, so the first type of plants that colonize the habitat, we call it as pioneer species, undergo colonization process such as grasses, ferns, and sages. And these plants colonize, able to survive in dry and nutrient-poor soil. And these plants have highly dispersed seed. So seed dia boleh berterabur jauh. And these plants have dense root systems. to bind sand together and to hold water and also humus, iaitu cebisan-cebisan daun, cebisan-cebisan benda hidup, dan humus. And this process will improve soil structure. And once this plant die, ada beberapa plant yang mati, decompose and become remains, this one provides even more fertile of soil. Jadi suburlah tanah itu. And then these backgrounds will form favorable soil that's favorable for successor species. Okay, such as herbaceous plant. Start dengan herbaceous plant dulu, iaitu tu batang dia yang lembut. And these herbaceous plants have better adaptations for these conditions, will grow larger and longer, will shade pioneer species. Dia akan tutup pioneer species, contohnya grass, rumput tadi, and then replace them. And these first successor species have wide dispersed seeds that able to spread, germinate and grow rapidly. And at the same time, this plant, kalau dia decompose, dia remains, the soil becomes more fertile, increase in quality of the soil. So this high quality of the soil is favorable for the second successors that have bigger or stronger support systems, such as shrub and bushes, will replace herbaceous plant yang batang lembut tadi. And then they grow faster. And the process akan repeat, sama juga. Dia decompose, dia mati, tanah lagi subur and favorable for bigger plants such as trees. By process successions, and these bigger trees will shade and cause competition with the shrub tadi. So shrub will get low light intensity. Bigger tree akan dapat more light intensity, and this bigger tree will replace forest floor species, and this process will gradual and continue until forms stable and matured community. We call it as climate community, such as tropical rainforest.